Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Zon Academy. Today is the second part of a five-part series with exocad. So, Dan, thank you so much for joining us. Maria, thank you so much. We love our new partnership with you guys, and so do our customers. They have been so excited about this series. I can't even tell you how many great calls I've been getting just thanking us for this time that you're spending with them. Today's version is surgical guide and splint design with exocad. So I'm going to turn this over to Dan, but before I do, I just want to let you all know that we will have a live Q&A with Dan at the very end. So please type your questions in at the bottom of your screen. And I'll have a couple of poll questions at the very end as well that we'll discuss when we get to that part. But for now, I just want to welcome everybody and thank you so much and turn this over to Dan.
Thanks, Fran. Yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. And we're also very appreciative of our partnership with Zon. And yeah, thanks again for joining. So let's get started. We got a lot to cover. All right, so just a little bit about myself. I do have primarily my experience within dental is within the lab world. So I've been, within digital dentistry, I'm getting close to 20 years now. So a lot of time at the bench, and for me it's awesome to be part of exocad America, and it's an amazing opportunity to be able to speak on behalf of our company and to be able to help our partners on dental. So for today's session, obviously we're going to be covering surgical guides and bite splints. So got a couple of slides here just to kind of discuss what we're going to be covering. So with ExoPlan, we're going to be covering our implant planning workflow all the way through creating a surgical guide. So with our guided surgery workflows, we have a rapid pre-planning mode that was introduced to basically give our clinical customers that a quick, fast, easy way to evaluate patient DICOM data and quickly place implants to evaluate patient situation. So at that point, they can save a scene, transfer it to their laboratory, who can complete the surgical guide creation. And from there, with our software, something to bring up is it is restorative-driven. So you're going to have the ability to do a top-down approach where you place a tooth library, and then you can place the implant to help support that proper placement of the tooth library. We do have very expansive selection of implants for ExoPlan. So you can actually load components. So if you want to place like a stock abutment or tie base, MUAs, you'll have that ability to do so. With our reporting structure, we do have the ability to include drill protocols. So that's really driven by the implant manufacturer, whether they include that information in their implant library. You can also incorporate custom screenshots to really fine-tune the reporting and point out specific areas or aspects of the scene that you're designing on. And speaking of scene files, for workflows where the laboratory starts the planning process and they need to utilize the dentist time to approve that planning, you can save a scene file and then schedule that time with the GP, the oral surgeon, or whoever's placing the actual implant. And then of course, we're going to cover the surgical guide design. So a great thing about our software solutions we offer is after you finish the planning process with ExoPlan, you're going to have a quick, easy way to utilize immediate load functionality. So we can import that project directly into our DentalCAD and provide a temporary restoration for day of surgery. So when you import that case within a DentalCAD and open the software to design the actual case, you're going to see a pop-up that the software recognizes there's implant planning information, it's going to give you the ability to import that directly in. So your exact placement of the implants will be loaded, and you can proceed with adapting your crown design to a tie base, direct to the implant interface, or stock abutment, custom abutments. So a lot of options there with however you want to proceed with that temporary design. And then bite splints. So what we'll do today is we'll incorporate our implant planning project, design the immediate load, and then we'll design a bite splint to protect that implant while it's healing. So with our bite splint module, we do have a great new feature within 3.2 LFC DentalCAD. So the feature I'm speaking about is the multi-tooth segmentation. What this does for our bite splint design, it's going to give you an automatic proposal for your margin line and the shell of the bite splint itself. So the margin detection itself, it basically looks at the segmented teeth. So our software is first going to detect the teeth in the patient arch scan. And after that, it's going to give you an automated margin line. And there's going to be different behaviors you can choose on the margin detection. So we'll cover all that later on. And just a couple of informational slides here that we wanted to share with you. So training and staying up to date with our team. So shop.exocad.com enables all of our end users to purchase online trainings from our exocad experts. So regardless of the software solution you're utilizing from us, whether it's chairside CAD, DentalCAD, or exoplan, our team will be there to help guide your organization in any training needs that you have. So with these trainings we offer, it is customized training. So after it's purchased, our team will reach out to you and really see what you're trying to get out of our software. What are your needs? And then we'll tailor that training to meet your organization's goals for our software. You can have up to 25 employees participate in the training. All participants will receive a certificate upon completion of the training, and the recording will be provided to you for future training internally. And for speaking of training, so we did move our North American headquarters to a new location. We have a modernized training facility that we are actually hosting trainings for our general public that want to attend. So we do have a session this Friday, but the next session we have coming up is covering partial CAD and quick snap solutions. So that'll be on May 9th. And my good friend Lucas Chardulo is going to lead that training. Be sure to register today to learn more about partial CAD and quick snap. You can see the QR code in the right-hand side if you want to scan that. And something we're all excited about is our 15th year anniversary of exocad being an organization. So the next celebration that we do have, we're going to continue this celebration at all of our on-site events at our trade shows. So come visit us at Lab Day West and get a cupcake on us. And we do constantly get questions on, when's the new software coming out, what new libraries are available for download. So what we do have is News Bites. So that's a newsletter that our marketing team puts together to really share everything that's going on with our company. Where can you come see us at events, or any new information with our company will be listed in that. And then our Exo blog. So this is really put together to where it's we basically invite industry experts, whether it's from the clinical or laboratory segment, and really they discuss and share how exocad solutions have benefited their organization. So it's really informative, good read, so check that out. And once again, thank you for attending. So we're going to go ahead and hop into our DB for exoplant. So for those of you who aren't aware of our softwares, this layout that you see on screen right now is our dental DB. This is your database. This is what houses all your cases. So for today's session, we do have a single unit implant. We're going to plan for an anatomic crown. For options and parameters within exoplan, you basically have the ability to kind of choose any restorative option and material, but the implant based, you're telling exoplan what you're actually planning for. And this is important for immediate load. And you can always tell the software you want to decide later. So regardless of what you select, implant planning or crown as an example, you're going to actually be able to place the implants. And then something to bring up here, you're going to see two action items that are referring to your guided surgery workflows. So implant planning is the guided wizard workflow that's really been part of exoplan since it's been launched. Rapid pre-planning was really an answer to feature requests by our clinical market. So for surgeons and the dentists, they wanted a quick, easy way to load patient DICOM data, evaluate the case, the spacing, quickly throw in some implants. And we're going to start off our case within rapid pre-planning. Now, you can start an implant planning directly. This is an optional step. So basically, when you perform rapid pre-planning, you're going to have the ability to either save a scene at the end of the workflow or continue directly in the implant planning mode. So we'll go ahead and launch rapid pre-planning, give you all a brief tour of that, and proceed into implant planning. Okay. I do have that opening on my other screen here. So the first step, once you open the software, is loading the patient DICOM data. So you'll be able to navigate throughout your Windows Explorer. It's kind of shrunk down here. For our demonstration case, we have the patient DICOM directly in the project folder. Now you can see I do have this information blurred out. So this is a new feature that was put in place. It's called incognito mode. So that's something you can enable via settings of the software. Okay, so welcome to rapid pre-planning. So with this layout, basically it's broken down into your axial, coronal, panorama, and curve cut secondary views here. And they are color coded, so you can visually see some lines that are showing where we're at within the DICOM data in each view. So to navigate through the DICOM data, you can right click and drag, and we can see the corresponding color coded line moving on screen. So we're basically looking at our panorama and we're seeing where our curve cut is at there. I can actually click in my mouse wheel as a button, and it's going to center all my views to be looking at that direct area. So depending on the view you're looking at, for instance, with curve cut, we can rotate around that position, and same with our coronal view here. So once we're happy with our selection and view, a couple other things to show. There are some menus here to where you can enable, grid, for instance, if you want to see those. This will unfocus and focus the view. So if you want to, primarily view at a specific aspect of the software. One thing that I think is really cool about our software is implant control here. So the implant views, we can see what's already selected, and we can choose different layouts or add different actual secondary views here. Now, the nice thing about this is really specific to what step in the software you're at, and then you can save your current view arrangement. So basically, you can fine tune the software and customize it to visualize the data how you like to see it. Whether you want to see a singular view, a specific step at specific steps, you have that ability to save that and really customize the software to the end user's liking. Now, you do have measurement tool that's enabled in all of the view buttons here. So, and you can simply left click a series of points to add a measurement. And then from there, there is a screenshot button. Now, the screenshots are really nice. With this version of the software, our development team added a tool to really allow the user to communicate more clearly to their customer. Now, if you go to tools, you're going to actually see screenshot and image management. So at this point, we can take specific views as a screenshot. We can capture all views, just as an example. And then you can see some options here, include in report. So if I want to a la carte add specific data sets to specific reports, so we're going to get one report for the implant placement and then a secondary report for the surgical guide itself. If I hover over any of these screenshots, you'll see some thumbnail images here. So the edit one is the one I wanted to talk about the most. By default, that's going to open Microsoft Paint. So if you wanted to add text or specific, visual indicators to kind of point something out, you can do so very quickly, save that edit, and now it's part of that screenshot. So from here, let's say you wanted to add all images to a specific report or both. You can do that via this button right here and these checkboxes. And now we can see it's been enabled, those checkboxes, for all the screenshots that are visible. So we'll save all those images. Just want to point that out. I think that's a really great feature. Okay, so we have our DICOM data. We're looking at roughly where we want to place our implant. Now I can go directly into place implant, or I can right click in the background and choose a specific section that I want to visit. So one thing to point out is define mandibular canal. So it isn't a mandatory step within ExoPlan, but if you do mark the nerve canal, you have to respect it. So the software will basically turn everything red if you're having those intersections with the nerve canal. And if we defined our project for an upper implant, we would see this segmentation of the sinus cavities as well. So for defining a nerve canal, we'll go ahead and select that. You're going to see this viewpoint with the default layout. I like to start this by left clicking on the metal frame in there, so the opening of that nerve canal. And now I'm doing a series of left clicks to define that nerve canal. And I can right click and drag in my secondary views and continue my defining process for that nerve canal. And you can always focus specific views and complete that placement of the points. So as I'm navigating through, I can see, maybe areas I want to drag points a little bit further. And that's just to kind of demonstrate how to do that process. So once your nerve canal is marked, you do have the ability to adjust the diameter to ensure that patient safety for the procedure that's getting ready to take place. I did right click on that text input field. And if you left click once, you can just see the default value that was used. You can either do that or reset current value. So I'll go ahead and select OK. If the patient was defined for an additional implant on the other quadrant, you would see the right canal as well as a clickable option that you can toggle back and forth on. So I'll go ahead and select OK. We have our nerve canal marked. And then from here, we'll just go ahead and hop in a place implant. Okay, so implant positioning. This was some new adjustments to the exoplan workflow. In the past, you'd have a separate wizard for anchor pins or fixation pins, where you can add those at any time here by left clicking to add those, and it'll be added to your list. If you look down here, we'll see the tooth number. So if we had multiple implant sites that were defined, you would see them all listed below. And then you can toggle between each one. Now, the big change within exoplan with this version is your ability to select implants, your surgical components, and prosthetic components. So this is going to allow you in a very streamlined approach to place implants virtually, choose your corresponding surgical kits, and load a prosthetic component. So maybe you have a stock abutment or tie base or MUA that you want to load to visualize during the planning process. You can do that very easily. So we'll first start off by selecting our implant. Now, there is a search field, so you can actually search for, specific libraries. So, I could say Strawman, for instance, and it's going to list every library that's available that has Strawman available. And that'll work for any of the systems. As you can see, we do have a fair amount of libraries that are available with the default installation. With our demonstration, we're just going to utilize our demonstration library that's been created. It's really, not a real implant library, but we like to at least show all the libraries we do have available. And from there, we can always download more. So anytime you're within this wizard step, in any of these selections, you're going to see a download more option. What this does is it's going to launch our integrated library manager. And from there, we're going to actually be able to choose implant systems that we want to download and install directly into our installation. So, and this is basically a reoccurring theme within our software solutions. So whether it's chairside CAD, DentalCAD, exoplan, when you're utilizing implant libraries or denture tooth libraries as an example, you'll be able to quickly see what libraries you want to download. You can expand each manufacturer and add those to your download list. And once you're completed with the libraries you want to download, you go to your list, you fill this out once, and then the software will automatically install those in a correct location. So I'm a huge fan of our library manager. It simplifies the process for people that are looking for implant libraries. You don't have to reach out to different vendors or milling centers for specific library files for installation, and it installs it for you automatically. Now, once you install those, you'll just have to close and reopen the software for the software to recognize those new installed libraries. So with our demonstration library here, I'm just going to kind of select the middle of the road, but you can see there's diameters listing at the columns, and then the rows are going to be your length. So we'll just kind of come somewhat in the middle. And once you make a selection, you're going to be able to 3D preview the actual implant file itself. There will be a clickable link to take you to that manufacturer's website, and then information on the library that you have selected. So from here, we're going to go ahead and select a sleeve or a surgical kit. And we'll just go with our demo drill kit for now. So we'll do fully guided. And then from there, as an example, depending on the implant library, they can define different surgical kits that are available for that platform. and then we can choose a prosthetic component as well. So for us, we do have our stock abutment library loaded here just for visualization purposes, like I was saying. Once you have your selections completed, then we can, navigate through and place an implant. Now, for us, you're going to see the 3D view in your main screen. So the 3D view of the DICOM data, we can see our model scan has not been aligned yet. We'll do that later on. I can turn that off. But you're going to be able to left click and drag the implant in any position. And then you'll see a series of gray arrows that's going to allow you to rotate that position of the implant. So in any direction you need to go, you'll have that functionality. And then let me change my view a little bit there so you can actually see, you can rotate the position of the actual implant itself. Okay. Now, if I look at my secondary views, I have that same functionality. So a lot of people that are, I would say, clinically trained are used to looking at implant planning in more of like a 2D perspective. So whether you want to visualize the 3D view or not, me coming from I would say more of a lab background with CAD CAM, that's how I was introduced to the CAD CAM world within digital dentistry. So, it's that's something I'm very comfortable and familiar with. But like I was saying with implant control, you can always modify that position. So we'll go ahead and just do a quick placement here, and then we can rotate around in our implant cross. So I'm right click and dragging right now, and basically it's rotating the data set around the implant itself. And you can see in the main view that blue cross section that's rotating. And from here, can change a couple angulations. We can left click and drag our sleeve depending on the manufacturer of the implant if you want to adjust the height of that placement. So from here, we'll go ahead and proceed forward. We have an implant placed, and I'm going to select the wizard button. So that's going to bring us back to that fork in the road, whether you save the scene or you finalize your planning. So I'm going to proceed with finalize our planning, and then you have a workflow option. So if you're doing tooth-borne or a case where you have an optical scan, STL file or PLY OBJ of the arch, then you do your CT to mesh. CT to CT alignment, that's going to be more for a dual scan protocol where you have CBCT of the patient and an additional one of like a prosthesis, a denture in place on the patient. All right, so when it comes to aligning your data sets, you're going to see these two split windows. Our DICOM control here allows you to basically kind of scroll through those data sets and tell the software what areas you want to focus on during the alignment. So I'm just going to pick distinct points within each data set that are clear in both the DICOM and the optical scan. Now, with this, if you have an additional mesh files that are loaded like this antagonist, it's just asking, is it already aligned to the DICOM file? And it's not, so I'm going to leave that checkbox unselected. And then from there, you'll see a rough alignment. Now, the points I would say don't necessarily have to be perfect in the initial step, because the rough alignment, once I hit next, it's going to do what we call a best fit alignment. So it's going to basically analyze both data sets and align those data. So align both data sets together. You can edit CT mesh. So if you want to trim some of the scatter you might see present, and it doesn't affect the actual DICOM data itself, is just for the alignment process. So if you want to focus in specific areas and ignore others. Another great feature is this marked feature region. So from here, you can actually paint specific areas to tell the software to focus on. So, if you have a lot of scatter on specific teeth, you can basically only mark areas that you know is clear in both data sets. And then once you're happy with your selections, you hit OK and select Next. So now the software has completed that best fit alignment, and we can look at the outline of the model in green in our secondary views and scroll through the data to make sure we have an accurate alignment. Now from here, I'm gonna select continue with acceptable alignment. And if you choose continue without acceptable alignment, you can still place implants, but you're not going to be able to create a surgical guide. Now, if we went through the normal workflow, typically you place your tooth library first. So you can choose from the loaded tooth libraries within ExoPlan. Then you're going to mark the mesial contact area and then the distal contact area. So we have a tooth library loaded. And then you're going to see a familiar workflow that you're used to within DentalCAD. So with the tooth placement options, you have your simple tab, advanced, and chain mode. So I'm going to go ahead and move over to advanced, and these buttons will allow me to essentially use all the tools that are available within simple. So if I want to left click and drag my library, if I want to hold control, as you see the hotkeys listed here, I can rotate my restoration, or shift allows me to scale. So I can kind of scale each aspect, turn on and off objects, adjust my rotation again, maybe bring in my lingual, check my buccal corridors. And at this point, we don't necessarily have to have a perfect tooth. So you'll have plenty of opportunity if you're utilizing the immediate load workflow in DentalCAD to adjust your tooth shapes. You may want to use the pointed to flat slide bar to adjust the anatomy and shape of the cuss tips that are being placed. So from here, the next thing that I would utilize is our instant anatomic morphing. So what this will do is it's basically going to adapt your design to the opposing automatically. It's a big time saver there. And for those of you that want to primarily stay within the secondary views, you can actually make those adjustments here as well. So it's allows you to kind of basically left click and drag specific areas, whether you want to utilize the secondary views or the 3D view. Okay, so we're in the ballpark now with our size and shape. And with any steps that you've done in rapid pre-plan mode, you're not going to have to repeat those by default, except for implant positioning. So this is your last opportunity to kind of adjust your implant placement to make sure you're supporting that tooth library design you placed. So from here, I'm not going to necessarily worry about perfect placement in this webinar, but that's kind of based on the doctor's discretion. So we're just going to go ahead and proceed with our setup that we have now, and we'll just go ahead and proceed. I guess one thing I didn't mention is this outline around the implant. So that's your safety distance. So if you go to your settings, you can adjust that. 1.5 millimeters is the default. And from here, I would say that's the main things I wanted to point out. So as I select next, the software recognizes those screenshots that we've taken manually or found. I have the ability to check those one more time or edit them, but I'm just going to select continue. And we'll confirm the above statements. So this is where you could save a scene to schedule that time with the clinician that's going to be placing the implant and have them approve the planning. So in this webinar, we'll just pretend that we're or the dentist for a moment and select I agree. And now the software is generating that PDF report and it's saving it to your project folder. So the cases folder that our software creates. From there, you can select show report and you can visualize rather quickly what's going on with it. So you'll get some DICOM information, panoramic images without any of the planning information, and then with our nerve canal and implant and sleeve that was placed, you'll see implant information, any settings that were used and angles placed, and then a series of automated screenshots based on the implant position, and then you'll see your additional images that we took manually. So now we will have the ability to design our surgical guide. So from here with our new workflow, you can actually load in separate scans if you receive updated scan data. And I think that's probably more utilized with the dual scan protocol. Maybe you receive an optical scan of the patient's arch, or you want to use the one generated from the DICOM of the patient's prosthesis. This first step of the sleeve design is our sleeve mounts for the surgical guide. So you have a series of settings that are put in place. One thing I want to point out is printer presets. So with all the integrated 3D printers for this software, you do have the ability to choose your printer model and the corresponding resin that manufacturer's validated. When doing this, the software is going to update any settings. You know, potentially there's a sleeve offset that they recommend. So for a SIGA, they provided our company a 0.06 millimeter offset for the spacing between our sleeve and the sleeve mount. And the next step is designing surgical guide bottom, where you can adjust your insertion direction by left clicking and dragging the arrow. You'll see the undercuts update dynamically. So I'm going to go ahead and proceed next by hitting Control Spacebar. And now the software is blocking out that arch form, allowing some spacing in between the patient's arch form and the guide we're creating. So we have a space of 0.03 millimeters, and now I can outline where I want my coverage. So from here, I can just do a series of left clicks to define where I want my surgical guide to be covering the patient's arch. Now, I could go straight across that implant site, or we can create two separate segments here that'll be connected automatically by the sleeve mount. And if, spacing is, I would say, a concern with being able to connect the objects, we do have attachments for supports as well. So now I'll start my second segment. And again, I'm just left clicking a series of points to basically outline where I want my surgical guide to have my coverage. I double click to complete my selection. And again, this is where you can adjust the thickness of the guide itself. So now we can see we have a preview of the surgical guide, and I'm at the attachment step. So I can basically left click to place an attachment. And you have different types here, whether you want a rectangular window, so that's what we're doing now. And that's basically going to be a cutout, so you can tell when, on the patient's arch, when it's fully seated. So we can see the teeth coming through that window. Now I know it's seated on the patient's arch. So I can add additional ones by selecting new. And then some additional functionality. Maybe you want to rotate by left clicking and dragging the points that are available. So you can kind of change the height. I can view how much of the tooth is intersecting through that purple square or rectangle there. And then I can rotate the position, or you can hold Control and rotate yourself. So depending on what angulation or positioning you want to utilize, you'll definitely have that functionality. So when you select preview, you'll have to unselect preview to place additional windows. So we have some windows put in place. Now the next step would be if we want to do text. So I can do text embossed, so that'd be a positive text, or debossed. So from here, I can just left click on the guide itself. I could change, maybe you want to put a pan number if you're a laboratory working on multiple cases. It's really kind of up to you. And then if you want to really customize the text, you can choose fonts. As an example, bold, italics, or actual symbols. So once we're happy with the placement, I'll just select next. And the software is going to take all those shapes and subtract the data from the guide itself. And now it's going to allow us to freeform, so we can grab and pull material, add, remove, and smooth accordingly. So add by default is left click and drag. And then if you hold shift, you're actually going to be removing material. And then smooth, you have your default smooth, which is going to blend lightly, and then shift will actually kind of basically really flatten that data set that you're adjusting. As you can see, there is a visualization that's enabled by default here. So that checkbox is showing you a thickness map. So you can quickly analyze the data, where you're too thin or too, areas that you can take down excess material. And again, you're going to see the screenshot images were detected. And then from there, we're going to actually have the surgical report that's provided. It's going to write that information and save it to the project folder as well. So we're going to be able to visualize our surgical guide and see all the planning parts that were put in place. So from here, I can select I'm done and select next. And that's completing your surgical guide process. Now, if you have a specific 3D printer enabled and you want to send that to your build plate, you can just click on your printer icon, and that will automatically be added based on the installation of that slicer software. So from here, we can select our parts and then proceed to printing. Now, the software will actually grab those files from your project folder and actually add that to the printer slicing software's build plate. So looks like me sharing my screen through Zoom, it might be slowing my PC a little bit. But the other thing too, like I talked about, was with immediate load. So open and explore, it's going to take me to that case file there. And I can copy my project there to import in my DentalCAD installation. You don't have to do this, but that'll allow you to duplicate your projects in the future within DentalCAD. It'll give you the ability to make it a local part of your database. So here we can see our surgical guide's been added to the software. And now I'm gonna leave my ExoPlan installation. We'll close out of ExoPrint. So now I'm actually within my DentalCAD software. Now, for those of you that have both softwares, you can combine the DB. So if you don't want separate databases, you can combine that. So just reach out to your friends at Zahn Dental, and their technical team will be able to help you out with that. And then from here, I'm going to go to the load screen, and I'm going to import from exocad project. Now, I copied that file earlier, so now I can paste it within my database. And it looks like I've already kind of placed that in, so I can replace that files in the destination there. And then now that I have this file within my CAD data folder, I'm going to import my my project and select continue. It looks like I may have been navigated to a different CAD data when I selected load. Sorry about that. So I'm gonna go to exocad project again, and go to the proper installation here. So I navigated to my DentalCAD installation and the CAD data folder within there, and we'll paste that folder within this installation. Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to select my .dental project file, and that's what the software is looking for when you're importing an exocad project. And when you're importing from the CAD data directory of your DentalCAD, you'll see treat as local. And that'll allow you to duplicate projects if you need to. All right, so now that it's imported, I'm going to go to design. And just show you a little bit of the immediate load process now. So now that DentalCAD's opening, we're going to see a pop-up that tells us that it's found that implant planning information. This checkbox will bring in the implant position. This one will bring in the tooth setup we created. So I'm going to import implant planning information now. So from there, I can see the implant I placed and the component that I selected. It remembered that I select stock abutment. You could do screw retained as an example, custom abutment. Well, we'll just proceed with the stock abutment workflow. From there, we're going to see the software recognizes the top of that stock abutment workflow or stock abutment library, and we're going to go ahead and select next. So our cement gaps have been completed, and now we're at our tooth placement to where we can modify the position. We're just going to keep this where it's at, just for being mindful of time. And now we're at a point where we could export our scan data with our tooth library that's put in place. So we could cut all of our intersections as an example. And then we can right click in the background, save scene as, or you can right click on save and export scene to mesh. So at any point, I'm going to turn off some objects here and show hide. So now only my full anatomic and my jaw scan is visible. So I'll right click, export scene to mesh, and then I could label that. We could just throw that on the desktop for now too. We could just call that our lower arch. And it's going to say visible objects only, yes. So what that has done is now I can use that to create a bite splint after our immediate load design. So we have our finished crown design, and I'm going to select I'm done. And that'll bring us back to our dental DB. And from here, I can duplicate my case. So it's going to create a new project folder for the same patient. I'm going to tell it to bring my scan data over. And now that I have a new case, we'll go ahead and save that. I could type in patient, then bite splint, for example. So I have basically a different project now that I can, basically change my my work parameters. So I'm looking at my DentalCAD parameters now, and I can choose bite splint. And I'm going to go with a standard bite splint mode. And then from here, I can left click and drag my indications, or I can hold shift and cover all the teeth I want. So now I define where I want my coverage for my bite splint. I can go into design. And we have our existing, our initial bite scan right now. So I'm going to go ahead and go into tools, add remove mesh, and I'm going to load an extra jaw scan. So the extra jaw scan is going to allow me to replace with the exported scan that I put on my desktop. So now I have my new scan that's loaded in. And if I hover over the bottom, I can go to my scan alignment. And basically I'm going to orientate my scans, left click a like point on each one, and the software is going to analyze both data sets and align them for us. You can merge the scan data, transfer surface regions, or replace. So I'm just going to replace that. And I'll go back into my wizard mode. And I had a pop-up earlier because I didn't hit cancel on the tooth segmentation. So right now the software is automatically attempting to detect all the teeth within the arch scan, including the tooth library that I placed in DentalCAD. So once the software does detect all the teeth, it's going to basically separate those scans and allow you to utilize that as a tooth library. If you chose a restoration type that utilizes tooth libraries, in this scenario, it's just going to detect the teeth, basically separating it from the gingiva so it knows where to automatically place the margin line for you. So we have our teeth detected. I'm going to go ahead and proceed forward by Control Spacebar. And our next step here, we're going to actually be able to, excuse me, generate our bite splint bottom. So this is no different than our surgical guide bottom. So we're creating an offset. So there's a defined value that creates a space in between the patient's arch form and your bite splint you're designing. And there's specific values that allow you to engage into a specific amount of undercut. So from here, once you hit apply, you can go into freeforming, and maybe you want to add some additional block out over your implant restoration to really protect and provide additional spacing around that. So you can just left click, a series of points to add that material. That way we're not interfering with that. Now, design bite splint top. So at this point, the software is going to basically give you a margin line. And when it comes to the segmented teeth, typically you're going to actually see your points connect like you would on all the existing teeth. But since this tooth library was positioned, it's actually a separate layer, a mesh layer. So anytime you're doing an exported design like that as part of the arch scan, I would just recommend left click and dragging those points on that tooth library that was part of the mesh that you created. So we didn't utilize the virtual articulator yet. I can actually do this at any time. So if I go forward, the software is going to create that bite splint layer. I can go into expert mode, tools, articulator. And at this point, I can actually open up my bite scan. So I'm gonna select OK here. The software is asking me if the position's OK with the articulator. So I have the exo skull loaded right now. And from here, I can open my bite. So we can allow space for that night guard. And now that it's already generated, I can actually turn that on via show hide and visualize where I'm at. Maybe turn my articulator off and inspect how much coverage do I have. So we do have some intersecting areas. I'm going to go ahead and leave that where it's at. I have move lower selected, and now I can simulate those jaw movements. Once I select OK, I'll see this box that allows me to simulate those jaw movements from protrusive or lateral movements, etc. I'm going to hop back into Wizard. And then from here, I can adapt. So if I want to do static occlusion or dynamic occlusion, dynamic is going to take into effect those simulated jaw movements. I can go into smooth at this point, maybe increase my tool size. I could hold shift, for instance, and really flatten this out. And in the previous step, there is a smoothing setting that you can adjust if you don't really want an intimate projection between the teeth. So if you crank up the smoothing factor when it generates the actual splint, you'll have that ability to do so. So again, adapt. Static will just be your relation in Z height, and your dynamic is going to take into effect that simulated jaw movements. Now, one thing to note, whenever you're in the DB, I didn't really mention, you can change the scan mode. I didn't do that when creating that duplicate scan file. And if you choose one with an articulator type, it's going to automatically put the articulator option within the workflow. So, and then if, for instance, if you want to utilize attachments with bite splints, you can go into freeform restorations from merge and save, select next, and you'll see the attachment tab here. So just as an example, I know some people like to utilize attachment along spline. This will actually allow you to utilize our bar workflow profiles to place a series of points, and it's going to project that bar profile wherever the spline is at that you're placing. You can double click to complete your spline, and then from here you can choose different profiles. So I typically would recommend using a green profile. That's going to give you more settings to adjust. For instance, if you want to adjust your width to get more of a flat plane. If you're wanting a true flat plane, you can utilize this checkbox here, and that'll make the top line flat. So, and then from there, you can adjust your height accordingly to get the coverage you want. So just wanted to kind of point that out as an additional feature that a lot of people may not be aware of. Okay, it looks like we're pretty much at time. Am I right, Fran? How are we doing with time?
We are at time, but if you need to go a little bit longer, you absolutely can. We have about 4 questions in the queue waiting.
Okay.
So you
So
let me.
I would say we could start covering some questions here.
Okay, good. So the first question comes from Joseph, and he said that he manages a lab for Clear Choice in Honolulu. And, you know, they're in the beginning stages of adding a digital design capabilities there. For practice purposes, do you have demo dongles available?
You know, at this time with the current versions, we're not offering demo dongles. We did in the past. I don't know if our development team's going to issue those again. So we have seen some requests lately. I think they stopped offering it because it wasn't really a heavily requested item. But yeah, at this point, we don't have a demo license available.
Next question is, can a multi-implant guide be designed and printed?
Yes. So one thing to bring out with ExoPlan, you can actually define upper and lower arches with multiple implants on each arch simultaneously. So basically when you define it that way on both arches or multiple sites, and you go into implant planning or rapid pre-planning, the software is going to ask you if you want to design for the upper arch, the lower arch, or both at the same time. So you can add as many implants as you want.
Awesome. Next question is, can a guide be designed without sleeves, such that handheld keys like Zimmer makes to fit directly in the guide?
So there, we do have one of our libraries that you can download for. It's actually the exocad library that will allow you to kind of do a custom size hole as well. That would kind of fit the need for what you're asking for.
Next question is, can guides be milled from PMMA? Can it mill on a Sirona MCXL?
I'm not too sure about the MCXL. That is kind of a smaller milling cabinet. So I would, you know, I would think you should probably reach out to your distributor, your machine. I know at the lab I was at, we had a MCXL at one point, and it was just more for rush cases for EMAX. So we never really milled any surgical guides. I'd say typically they're They're 3D printed from what I've seen in my experience. But yeah, so I think when it comes to post CAD, I would just, reach out to your distributors with the machines you have and see if they have materials. And in the milling side, you really, on top of, can the machine handle the material that you want to make it out of? And then is there a tool strategy that's already developed by that company to where it can produce the material you want?
And our next attendee wants to know if there's a way to access part one, getting started with exocad in this series. And yes, absolutely. All you have to do is go to our YouTube page and you'll be able to see it there. If you can't find it there, which I don't see why you wouldn't be able to, but if you can't, you can also email to me if you want to at zon@henryschein.com. And Tanya is also saying thank you so much, all in caps. So everybody, I'm sure, enjoyed
Yeah.
this one today. This was a good one. Thank you. Well, they're all good. So I just have just a couple of polls that I want to put up and just to let you know what's happening next in this series. So here's the first one. Would you like to add exocad design software to your lab? If you don't have that at the moment, you could answer now if you want to. But what's coming up next is next week, 4:15, we're going to be diving deep into denture design. On 4:22, we're going to go into removable partial dentures and flippers. And then on 4:29, the last of the series is all on X design. So that's going to be really cool. So I want, everybody to take advantage and sign up if you haven't already. And we are going to be having some exocad hands-on courses available. We're looking to take probably 10 designers. We'd love to have you join us for something like that in person. And basically, if you answer yes to this, what I can do is I'll probably give you a call once I get all the information from our friends here at Zoom who answered yes to these questions. And I'll reach out to you sometime tomorrow, either tomorrow or Wednesday. I'm traveling tomorrow to our first road show in Phoenix, Arizona. So hopefully I'll get to you tomorrow and I'll tell you all about where it's going to be, potential dates, to see what you're interested in learning about so we can tailor it to basically suit your needs. And we'd love to have you join us for some hands-on courses. So that'll be really, really good. And thank you so much for answering. We have, a couple of our friends from last week that have already answered and said yes, that they'd like to join us, some from Arizona, some from California. So the courses are kind of booking up. So I'm going to be looking into some alternative dates as well to be able to discuss with you. But we look forward to seeing you next week with us. Dan, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Maria, it's always a pleasure to have you on Zon Academy to give your insight to our customers. So we thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. If you haven't registered, make sure you get on there and register. You will get the recording if you can't make it. So that's also a plus of always taking any of our courses here on Zon Academy. You do get the recorded session if you can't make it. So I want to thank everybody and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
And
good
thanks,
day, you all.
everyone. Appreciate you attending.